In today's video, we're going to go over all the things you need to know about this giant Trance Advanced E Plus Elite 3, and we'll go over how I would turn this base tier model eMTB into the ultimate riding machine. Welcome to Frankie's eMTB channel. Hope everyone is having a great week so far. Last week on this channel, we visited Nate and his giant Trance Advanced E Plus Elite 3, and man, I had a blast riding his bike. Although the bike's suspension was not dialed to my settings, I was easily able to get a feel for its kinematics. Light, agile, maneuverable, poppy, while feeling planted through chunk. Those are the things that I felt on my very first ride. But before we get into all the customizations, let's quickly go over the stock specs. The giant Trance Elite Plus has 140 millimeters of travel in the rear, 150 millimeters of travel in the front. The Elite 3 has a front triangle made of carbon and the rear with aluminum. It's riding on mixed wheel sizes with 29-inch in the front and 27.5 in the rear. RockShox 35 gold for the fork, RockShox Deluxe Select R Air for the shocks, 12-speed Shimano Diore for the shifter and derailleur, and your standard Shimano 4-piston MT420 for the brakes with the Sync Drive Pro 2 motor, a full 85 Newton meters of torque on this super light. 400 watt-hours of internal battery with an option to get a 200 watt-hour range extender, all at an MSRP of $5,700 USD, not including that range extender. Here's some geometry for a size medium. Reach 457 to 462 depending on your settings. 447 for the chainstay, which makes it very fun and poppy. 65.8 degrees or 66.5 degrees head tube angle depending on your setting. The wheelbase at 1,215 millimeters or 1,212 millimeters depending on your setting. Seat tube angle at 76 degrees or 76.70 degrees depending on your flip chip settings. SoCal riders, need your bike worked on? Message CJ at Faust Tuning Works on Instagram _inside FTW for an appointment. He's been rebuilding and tuning bikes for over a decade now. Hands down the best mechanic I know. Book an appointment with him and let him know Frankie sent you and you'll get $50 off your first service. Now let's jump on to the fun stuff, the modifications. Both Nate and I agree that the giant Trance E Plus Elite 3 is the best model to get the best bang for your buck. And the next model up, the Elite 2, has a carbon rear triangle and slightly better components, but with a $1,300 difference. I think my biggest issue with the Elite 2 is that eventually you'll have to upgrade that Fox 36 Performance and that Fox Float Performance shocks. Both these components are essential and are limited in compression and rebound settings. So to fully unleash this bike's potential, you'll end up upgrading these two key components. So therefore, why pay that $1,300 difference? I would rather shop around with that $1,300 difference and try to look for some deals. And believe me, in 2024, I think you'll be able to find some killer deals online. I do feel the difference with the rear triangle, but a significant performance difference as an average rider. I think $1,300 difference for that rear triangle doesn't justify the price. I would rather spend it on the suspension. So if we look at Nate's build, he modded his bike with the RockShox Lyric Ultimate for the fork and the RockShox Super Deluxe Ultimate for the shocks, XT drivetrain, XT brakes, E13 carbon wheels, and DAT components in the cockpit. Nate went top tier on the suspension and mid tier on the drivetrain and the brakes, and it definitely transformed this bike to a superior ride. But for some, the cost may be just out of reach since you just spent $5,700 for the bike. I think what I would do instead, believe it or not, is to go with a DVO build. After getting a DVO shock on my Levo, I've been loving these shocks and the way they feel. And I'm only on the Topaz T3 Gen 1 shock. I would also go for the Onyx single crown 29-inch fork and pair that with the Topaz Air, the Gen 1, Gen 2, or Gen 3, whichever best deal you can find online. And like I said earlier, I'm on a Gen 1 and it's running exceptionally good on my Levo. And with all the time that I spent on my Spank Spike handlebars, it's hard to imagine me riding without it. I love how it dampens unwanted vibration and it just makes my ride that much more comfortable. This next upgrade is optional. I would swap out the wheels and get the Spank VibraCore 350s, 28 spokes, front and rear. Spank is making some quality aluminum components, believe it or not. So if you're interested, use my code SendItFrankie15 at checkout on the Gravity Cartel website and get 15% off of your purchase. Also, a must is getting rid of those stock Maxxis tires with the EXO casing front and rear and get something beefier. If you want to stick with Maxxis, my suggestion, regardless of which tire it is, double down in the rear, EXO casing in the front. Those are my suggestions after years of riding Maxxis tires. And if I was on a really tight budget, the 3 essential upgrades would be fork, shocks, and tires. I keep the brakes and drivetrain as is. And if you don't like DVO suspension, I would consider anything with a compression and rebound adjustment on both the shocks and the fork. That is all my suggestions for customizations if you are planning to purchase the Giant Trance X Advanced Elite 3. If you want more information from our rider owner review, check out our video from last week where I interviewed the owner of this Giant Trance X Advanced Elite 3. Hope you all enjoyed this one. Use my affiliate links to purchase any of the components discussed in this video as it will directly help my channel out. You can also join me on Patreon, $3 a month. Monthly Patreon group rides will be starting very soon. Have a great rest of the week, and as always, stay electric. Peace.